Okay, now, so we're at it with our second to last episode of HWH Season 13. And as you can tell, we're going to be examining more models to find out who does it best, out of all of which that I have selected so far. Now, first off, we're going to be choosing our bunch here. We have something called Rink Racer, which, if you can't tell by the detailing of it, and of course this little compartment here, it's kind of something that you could find on the skating rink. Yeah, enough said. Haven't done much with it, and I don't know if I do plan on doing much with it, but anyways, we'll move on to another model. This one's more classic than the rest, coming out all the way in 1969. Yeah, so think about it. This was about a year into Hot Wheels' production, and this was, of course, one of the first that came around, Chevrolet Nomad. And the Nomad was a unique classic amongst the wagon population in the 50s, and more so, it brought on popularity because it was in a movie, Highway 35 World Race. So, popular vote is a pretty big one to choose from, but we'll move on to another model that we've also used before, Kit Kart. Now, this model, you can't really say a lot about it. The name doesn't exactly mean all that much, and it does feel like a roll cage on wheels. So I guess we'll just move on right away. Oh, geez. Managed to lose a model down there. But anyways, move on to our next one, which is the Mazda 787B. This one, of course, is a reproduction issue, while having an original copyright date of 2022, which would make it a 2023 model reproduction year. So I will say that it does recycle the same old wheels as it did back then, but with the brand new sort of simplified wheel design. Yeah, so details aside, it's a model that's good in the realistic department, and thankfully not so rare anymore compared to its older counterparts, but still. Performance is not so great on this one because of its low profile. Here's another one that I feel like is not worthy too much to be talked about either, the 40 Ford pickup. Yeah, the name says it all. It's a drag pickup from the 1940s. And I will say the version that I got at least was pretty good for the value. Now let's move on to our next model, something that I've had used many times, the Mazda Repu. In real life, this was a pickup that unfortunately not lasted very long. Mostly throughout the early 90s is when production was around. But this is a model I've had for a while, and I will say it does surprisingly great on the track. But now we're going to move on to the Mazda RX-3. Yeah, yet another Mazda model of the bunch. And this is also not so fortunate on my part, despite also being relatively newer, being made for the 2015 production line, well into 2016 just as well. So not much to say on that as well. As we move on to another model, the Toyota AE86 Sprinter Trueno, or just simply put, the AE86. So, with the unique details, including the original pop-up headlamps that were popular at the time that the Trueno was around, there's just not much more I can say about this piece. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, I've not made a good selection here, but don't worry, because I've already made a couple of good picks here. I'd say the Chevrolet Nomad and the Mazda Repu are pretty high up, but here we go, Cadillac Eldorado Brougham. This model is also not very easy to find unless you look hard on eBay like I have over the years. I will say, it's a unique plum color to it. Enough to go with the likes of Dodge, but it's a Cadillac, so enough said on that part. It's not exactly pink like how Elvis Presley would have wanted it, but nonetheless, it does good for its part of style and showcase of the 50s. But we're going to move on to Runaway Rescue, which is something much more recent as well. Released all the way back in 2019, a good 6 years ago. Even has itself an articulating ladder, like this. Can even lock just like that. But off-road tires, large body, doesn't really make it a good track car, unfortunately. Here's a model that's also pretty well known on HWH as well as other Hot Wheels related media. Ford Shelby GT350R. It's a good realistic model by many means, but it unfortunately just does not excel too well in regards to many things, including track performance. So we'll just simply leave it at that. It does good for what it might be in some ways. Now we have 16 Angels, which also is a pretty good star on the track. Not exactly as Track Stars material as some others out there. Even Mattel just happens to put the name Track Stars on a lot of models, not quite realizing what they're truly talking about. But we do gotta chalk it up to the fact that 16 Angels is a model that's been around since 2003. And it does even have a loop logo on it, meaning it can go through loops. So I do say it's a good model for most reasons, not just for one is described by Mattel or imprinted on the base. Here we have RD-03, a racing drones model. Now there were a lot of these made, not just RD-03, but others as well. There was RD-01, RD-02, RD-04, you get the idea. A whole line of racing drones models had existed throughout the Acceleracers era, especially from 2005 to 2010. But this, of course, is a reproduction model that came out in 2015. Yeah, so it does got some good detail on it though. Almost giving it a more hieroglyphic look, which does cater to the unique lore of Acceleracers. Given that the one episode in which it talked to us about the origins of the racing drones, it goes back many, many years. So it's a good reference to what that episode had shown us lore-wise. Here's another realistic model and also another color shifters model. This is 24/7. Also famous for Highway 35 World Race, much like the Chevrolet Nomad, but 24/7 on the other hand is not as well known. And I will say, the spoiler and the side skirts and diffuser are not exactly the best in terms of track performance, just as much as most of the others. Now we got Tomb Up, which I feel like is also something that's not entirely worth mentioning, but I just can't say for sure. There's not much more I have done with it other than a few appearances at most. Nitro Scorcher. Something that's notably from the Team Hot Wheels lineage, which was mostly made possible throughout the mid-2010s. But still, apart from that little piece of media that came out back in the day, probably not the best just as well. And, well, it looks like we got 2 more models to go here. So, now we have a Nissan Works GTR version 2 from LB Silhouette Works. So, for 2021, they were able to get LBWK as part of the Liberty Walk edition. So this is essentially a Liberty Walk GTR, just crazy mods, but not much more for me to say. And finally, we have ourselves another model that I've made popular on the show, and also this was part of the 50th anniversary 5-pack, along with a few others like Bifocal 2, HW50, and a few others. But the fact is that I practically started Hot Wheels Hilarity just after the festivities of HW50 came to an end. Nonetheless though, Scupa di Fuego just does a fantastic job as it stands. And well, I was able to get Rink Racer out of, well, whatever fall it made. Yeah, it pretty much went down there to the bushes down below. So anyways, to recap here, Rink Racer, not exactly a worthy model here. Liberty Walk Nissan, not much more to say about that. Same with these two. Pop culture, for the most part. But I wouldn't say that they're exactly worth it to keep around here. Shelby G2350R and 16 Angels. I would say they can go alongside Scuba di Fuego. One-Way West Cube. Cadillac Brougham. Mazda and Toyota. I guess the Repu can also stick around as well. And then we have the Ford pickup. Also not so good. And finally, the Mazda and kit cart can go as well, while the Nomad, of course, can stick along with the other 4 that we have here. So, unlike with the last one where we ended up with 4 contenders looking to see who is the best so far, we got 5 here. So, as I said before, with Scuba de Fuego mostly being famous on my show because it's part of the 50th anniversary package, and that was also when I started the whole thing to begin with. I will say it does good performance-wise on the track and has actually succeeded a few different times, but at the same time, I'm a bit conflicted on the fact that it doesn't quite match up with that of most other contenders that are even bigger. But still, just a few other things worth knowing. That does allow it to pretty much sideline a few others here. Shelby G350R was not so great in some performances. A similar thing can be said about the 16 Angels here, which, while it also does pretty good on the track, it's also not entirely worth keeping around that much for this instance. Mazda Ripu, also surprisingly good, despite being a pickup, which you don't expect that to happen too often. And the Chevrolet Nomad, I will say, does do a good enough job to be alongside Scuba de Fuego, but as we know, only one of them can do so. So, being that Chevrolet Nomad was one of the first models ever made in Hot Wheels history, and the fact that it was made famous because of its involvement in a movie, that does rank it up pretty high, making it pretty tough for me to sideline who or whom in this instance. So, whether it's going to be Scuba or 55 Nomad, you know what, screw it. This, of course, started it all, and I actually got this long before I got the Nomad, so there you go. We got another cup full of models here, all complete, and, well, all we gotta do now is just go for the 3rd and final one, which I will probably go back in there to make it happen. So, tomorrow, we'll have one more of these, and pretty much wrap things up for good. So, I will see you guys then.